Why couldn't the Khajiit attend the party? Because he had to go elsewhere. What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to be talking about PvP sets, how to build yourself for PvP, what to start collecting, and also, if you're watching this, because it's right around the time of Mid-Year Mayhem, you might think to yourself, these are probably going to be some good sets to sell. I'm gazing out into a wide array of possible sets for you to craft. There's overland sets to get. There's DLC sets to get. There's dungeon sets you can get, monster sets, mythicals. And today I'm going to take all of that and I'm going to smush it into very easy to condense and easy to digest information and kind of talk you guys through how to build characters for PvP, because I think it's one of those things where a lot of people just blanket copy what other people do and they don't really theory craft things that work well for them. So we're going to be going over all that and more in today's video. And we are also on the road to 15,000 subscribers, so if you don't mind, hit the subscribe button. My co-host is asleep currently, so I'm sorry I can't try to get free brownie points for that, but thank you guys for helping me get to this point, and we are cruising towards that goal, so thank you guys again. So to start us off, we're going to talk about a few points. One of those is that I'm going to help make this conversation very digestible and easy to understand. We're going to break down every set into one of two categories: offensive, defensive, or in the rare circumstance, there might be something that can do both in the same set. The other thing that we're going to talk about today too is proc sets, because I think people hear the word proc, they don't quite know what it means, so here's an easy definition. If you have to do something or something has to happen to get that bonus, that's a proc. So for example, I'm wearing Necropotence. Most people don't think that Necropotence is a proc set, but you have to have a pet active to get the maximum Magicka. So even though it technically is just a straight stat boost and you don't have to do anything crazy, it is still technically a proc set. An example of something that is not a proc set is something like Gaze of Sithis, where just wearing it gives you these stats. So that's the difference between proc, no proc. Why procs are sometimes good is generally the game rewards you for utilizing a proc set. So for example, Necropotence versus Crafty Alfiq is night and day. Crafty Alfiq does not give you as much because the assumption is that your pet could die, you might not have a pet build, so the game will usually reward you for using proc builds in some sort of circumstance. So that's an important kind of thing to keep in your mind when we're theory crafting together during this video. And another quick thing to keep in mind is that Battle Spirit does have positives and negatives. And you can see those here. So for example, you're probably not going to want to take your big juicy health recovery build into Cyrodiil, while health recovery defensively is pretty good, especially in PvE content. When you have Battle Spirit active, which is going to be active whenever you're doing any type of PvP, this is what you're going to receive on screen, so keep that in mind as well. So I'm going to break this down to you now very simplistically. Generally, you wear 3 sets in the Elder Scrolls Online, whether it's a mythical, 2 5-pieces, 2 5-pieces, and then a mythical. You could certainly do something weird, with 3-piece sets. We're not going to get anything super complicated, but by the end of the video, if you wanted to do that, you'll have the knowledge to do so. But simplistically, if you like to find yourself in the conflicts, I generally suggest if those 3 sets, you maybe have 2 defensive and then 1 offensive set, or 2 offensive, 1 defensive sets. The only exception to where I think you can successfully run 3 offensive sets is if you're doing something like a Nightblade, or you're very confident in your ability to run skills, or you have some sort of sets that kind of bleed into each other. Because how I define defensive sets is take a set like Mara's Bomb, for example, that really works well to keep you alive. That's a defensive set. 90% of the people that are currently running stamina characters that are using sword and board or two-handers are running Mara's Bomb. So its main goal is to keep you alive. Another thing that they might be running with that is also a defensive mythical, such as something like the Marken Ring. The Marken Ring, notably too, can be both defensive and offensive because it gives you a little bit of both things depending on how you want to run it. Same with things like Death Dealer's Feet. Having more stats is just generally a good thing, so then you might be thinking to yourself, well, what do I classify as a offensive set? And that's generally something that gives you either a lot of resources, because people may not know this, but the higher your stats are, not your weapon and spell, just your Magicka and stamina, the more damage you do without taking into consideration those other things as well. So that means that you can run things like Crafty or Necropotence as a offensive set, but also has the defensive utilization of having those stats as well. So there's a little bit of bleed into different things, but I think if you think of it simplistically, is you have sets that are focused on keeping you alive, and then you have other sets that are focused on doing damage, you'll be okay. For me, that is 100% Gaze of Sithis is the keep myself alive set, and then the other sets are more so focused on a little bit of just stats as well as being able to dish out damage because I'm focused on that maximum Magicka build. Whereas you could do the exact same thing with doing maximum spell damage or maximum weapon damage. And again, let us not forget that you generally do get bonuses if you are running something that procs. And there's different types of PvP mentalities to have. So I am of the mindset that my skills as a sorcerer act as my burst. A lot of people will tell you that the only way you can get kills in PvP is bursting people down, like a surprise factor, a little razzle dazzle, if you will. They expect one thing, you hit them with something else. And for me, as a sorcerer, that is the sorcerer's skills that I use. So I can focus more so on the stats. By hitting Daedric Curse and then getting some Crystal procs and, then getting some Mage's Fury, you can really burst people down where they're not expecting it. But you can also have sets that proc in the same way also. Why is bursting people down helpful? And that's because, well, people generally don't want to die. I myself am included. You can see that I have the ability to teleport away. I have the ability to make myself go faster. I have the ability to convert things into health and magicka. I can give myself a shield. These are all important things to consider, and that's generally why building for burst can be very helpful. This is why we kind of talked about that in our skills session, because the skills are very essential to do that. But not only do skills do that, you have sets that do that also. Now, there's not as many sets that are as popular for doing that, but if you take something like Moon Hunter, for example, when an alchemical poison fires, increases your weapon and spell by 547. It's a pretty decent chunk of increase. Not saying I suggest that, for example, but even if you look at that versus something like New Moon Alkalite, that's actually higher than New Moon Alkalites, even though there's a negative of increasing the cost of your active abilities by 5%. So you can see that you're generally rewarded again for using those procs. So what does that mean though for you? It means that you can actually control your procs and kind of force them to work for you. The most common example that I think is the easiest to master is Clever Alchemist. You drink a potion, which mind you could already give you a shit ton of weapon and spell depending on the potions you use, and you have 20 seconds of 589 weapon and spell damage, which means that you can proc these things together to give yourself the burst. Your opponent's not going to be expecting you if you hit them and they're kind of going, okay, this is about how much damage they're doing, and then this proc goes off, and then boom, now you're getting yourself an additional bonus of damage. That's why I think that having your sets work for you is the most essential way to do this. I can praise this song till my lungs hurt, but for example, I have friends that don't use potions, so this set would be useless for them. And do not worry, because there's a portion of the video where I'm just going to start listing off sets that could work together, but these are the theory crafting things that I want you guys to start thinking about. Start thinking, well, when I have do I drink potions very often? Could I use something like this? And then think to yourself too, maybe I could pair this with other sets that I think that would work really well for me. And then what do I think some of those sets could be? What could I proc in addition to this set that I can control? Because in my opinion, I like to recommend sets that are easy to control procs, because when you're for example, every time you slap your opponent with a pool noodle, they have a chance to explode and 10,000 points of fire damage and give yourself 300 weapon and spell damage after your pool noodle strike. Well, it can be sometimes hard to notice that effect going off, so when you have effects where you physically know you can control it, it becomes significantly easier for you. I've had to remove my face for this portion of the video because of where the screen was, but essentially, I wanted to talk to you guys about how you can build a front bar and a back bar to work for you. Mara's Balm is a great example of this, but it is not the only one. So you think to yourself, why might I want Mara's Balm only on the back bar, but not the front bar? And then you might think to yourself, how would I do that? And the answer is actually super simple. You just have an arena weapon on your front bar. It could be a bait strand weapon. It could be a master's weapon. It could just be a two-piece of a completely unrelated set. And then your back bar would be your completed 5-piece. How can you do that? Well, you could have the jewelry of Mara's Balm, and then you could have a sword and shield of Mara's Balm, so that way you only get the 5-piece bonus when you flip to your back bar. Why might you want to do that? Is because instead of having to focus on, get that 15-second cooldown and it kind of be determined by RNG, you yourself, when you go to your back bar, when you have those 6 or more negative effects and you want to be healed, because you're going to be getting healed by a pretty significant portion, you are able to control that. You're able to switch to your back bar and get that benefit in that moment. And that's why having some control over which of your sets are active can be very helpful. Another example of this are things that can be procced on your back bar and then brought to your front bar. So for example, I sometimes will run the Armor Master set, which is craftable. And essentially, when you have an armor ability active in combat, your physical and spell resistance is increased by 5,940 for 10 seconds. So you activate it, flip back to your front bar, and you have essentially 10 seconds of free extra resistances. And you can use this on any class. And then you also get the ability to run interesting one-piece weapons that you might be interested in. So one of my favorite ones to do is the Master's Perfected Staff. So say, for example, this is only going to give me 4 seconds of a buff, but 600 weapon damage and spell damage. That is not nothing to scoff at. Now think to ourselves, well, if we got Clever Alchemist and we got this proc to go off at the same time, we are almost getting like 1,100 weapon and spell damage. We're actually over 1,100 weapon and spell damage all at the same time. And you are able to utilize this at any given point. So you can continue to use Destructive Touch and increasingly use that throughout the conflict while your Clever Alch is procced. That's how the best players burst people down, is because they combine a lot of their sets at once. So in theory, you could run headfirst into a fight. You could be wearing Clever Alchemist, Armor Master, and you could be using this Inferno Staff right here. You'd have a whole other set piece too, but let's not even focus on that right now. So what you do, you go to your back bar, you proc your armor ability, so that's going to give you the extra damage, so that'll be your extra, hey, keep me alive in here. Then you pop your potion, so now your potion will also be giving you some bonuses, and that can be whatever bonus you want. And then you pop your abilities, so you use your Destructive Touch that will stun them. If you're a sorcerer, this is a great time to put all those abilities on them, your curses, because your curse is now going to do damage based on when you put it on them. So you can do your curse, you can hit him with a Crystal Frag, you can hit him with a Mage's Fury, and it's all going to be effective of when you had that increased damage. And you're going to hit them for a shit ton of damage. And you have a whole other set that we're not even talking about right now, because you're able to build in another set. Because if you do this 3-piece set with an arena weapon, you're able to do something like, slap on Balorgs. You could have a monster set with this combination on. So maybe you want to ult. So maybe you hit him with your Destructive Touch, you ult, and then you use it again, and you continue to pound on the damage with them. That is how people will kind of combine these together. Is this the best way to do it? Probably not, but those are the ways that sets interact with each other, and this is how you can get your sets to interact with you. And if this is something that you would see as working with your playstyle, this is how you start to have those conversations with yourself, because everyone plays differently. Not everyone likes to bar swap actively in a fight. You might not want to bar swap every 10 seconds. You might be like me sometimes, and I just want to bar swap when I don't want to die. And my back bar is simply the go here when you do not want to die bar, and then I can focus on keeping myself alive and then switching back to the front bar again when I want to do damage again. But some people, they like the bar swapping, and generally you're rewarded for doing those types of things, bar swapping, because you can sneak in more sets. Like, for example, you're able to sneak in an arena weapon by playing that way. And for those of you who may be new to PvP or may, be still kind of experimenting, another really important thing to consider is obviously you have to have resources to survive. You have to have resources to be able to do things. That's why sets that give you those resources back are I do consider a defensive set. A lot of people consider them sustain sets. More so, I just want to kind of break things down into a more simplistic approach, but consider that as we kind of start looking through different resources and different guides that people have created that talk about a lot of these sets, and we can kind of go through them piece by piece together. So here is a great resource. This was done by Orzo Builds, which I know I'm butchering the name and I feel terrible because I'm in a Discord with them, but this is an absolutely phenomenal resource. This is specifically for Magicka. However, they do have a stamina option. We're going to look at some other guides as well. But I just want to kind of go through some sets with you, kind of talk about them. So the first one they have is Shackle Breaker, which is a craftable set. You will notice, by the way, that there's a lot of good craftable sets. You can see that this set specifically focuses on Magicka sustain, damage, and stamina sustain, because another really important thing to consider too is you're going to have to be dodge rolling, blocking, and other things as a Magicka character, so that can be really important. Spinners, which is really just focused on penetration. Heartland Conqueror, which is going to boost your weapon trait by 100%. What that means is, and this is why I recommend it for all my training gear, is so it doubles the training trait on the weapon. But if you have something like Sharpened, it's going to double that as well. Amber Plasm is just a really great stat when it comes to boosting your attributes as well as damage. Crit Chance, Eternal Vigor is probably my favorite werewolf set. This is going to give you a lot of survivability. I don't know if I'd put it on a Magicka character per se, but you could definitely look at it. Crafty Elf Reap, we've already talked about. It's just straight Magicka. New Moon Acolyte is just straight damage. You don't even have to worry about a proc necessarily. You only really have to worry about making sure that your resources are not getting too low because of that additional cost. Calorians, which used to be probably my funnest ganking build because it gives a lot of burst, and you can see I'll pull it up here for you guys. Because it's such a unique effect. When you deal critical damage with light or heavy attack, you launch a projectile at your target, and this deals 894 frost, fire, shock, or disease damage. It used to do significantly more in the good old days, but not anymore, unfortunately. Spell Strategist is another interesting one. Very good single target damage. Clever Alchemist, we've talked about it so much. Ward Maiden is really good if you want to start building in things like magical damage. Void Collar is one that you could just get a shit ton of damage. Void Collar is also one of those ones where sometimes people will only wear it for the 4-piece because it is just straight stats all the way up, but some people will also wear it to its 5-piece as well. There's no wrong way to do it, obviously. Dark Convergence is one of those playstyles we haven't really touched upon today. Hrothgar really helps kill those players with higher resistances. Stoons is an offensive set. Penetration does damage to off-balance enemies. You have the ability to off-balance them based on your skills. That does a lot. Bright Throat Boast is a way to get so much Magicka. Sustained Vicious Death is it's like the original Plague Break. Stiggins is a good proc set because all you have to do is come out of stealth and you are going to be able to have it. Now they also start talking about some DPS monster sets. Zons is a great one, especially for single target damage. Kjolnir's Nightmare, which I know I'm butchering, is another really good one, but you have to light weave to get the best results. Slime Crawler is just a straight extra damage buff. And Creatus Behemoth is another one of those ones that's really popular. I would say that it's very much more focused on PvE than PvP. Ice Heart is just good. It's just a very passive kind of proc that will help keep you alive. Maw of the Inferno is how you build those scummy pet builds that lag out Cyrodiil. Balor's Wolf needs no introductions. Every time you ult, you just do shit tons more damage. Lambris, mostly PvE. Zol is an interesting one that makes people feared. It's a very unique one that you can get from the Imperial City. Grunthar is much more, I think, focused on PvE. Valken Scoria is just a really fun one. Very, very beautiful looking one as well. Does some nice damage. Engine Guardian, straight for sustain and survivability. Now we've got Mythicals. Harpooner's Waiting Kilt is probably going to be something that's focused strictly on PvE. Death Dealer's Feet, however, is not. You certainly could use it for PvE, but the amount of stats that you can build up, so being in combat basically just gives you tons more stats, and that works so well with Magicka characters because you're able to just crank out some stats. I absolutely love that set. Mora's Whisper is another interesting one I think could work very well on a Nightblade. Oaken Soul Ring, again, is another one of those ones that does not really need an introduction. Thracian Stranglers can do a lot of damage to players, but you're going to have to very intricately do it because you cannot use stealth. That will break it. But basically, every time you get a kill, you are going to increase your damage. I see a lot of people using this in the Imperial City because you can build it up on those mobs. Sea Serpent's Coil was something that I slept on for a while, but is actually phenomenal. Basically, the downside being that you lose your movement speed, but you gain a ton of extra damage, which is really not too shabby, especially because they changed the Vampire to basically be a really good streaker. So now you have a lot more mobility on classes that did not used to have mobility. What's really interesting is so this is their exact same guide, but for stamina sets, you'll notice there's a lot of them that are the same. Of the 4 that you can see on screen right now, 3 of them were also on the Magicka set, with the only notable difference being Titanborn is different. But you can see Spriggans was on the last one. Venomous Smite was not. New Moon Acolyte was. Stoons, Clever Alk, Mark of the Pariah, which I would say Mark of the Pariah can also go onto your Magicka characters. I think a lot of times people don't necessarily feel the need to be as bulky when they're on a Magicka character, but don't take that as gospel. Deadly Strike could also be very good on both Stam and Mag Templars. Plague Slingers, Warriors Fury, Ancient Dagonguard. We can see Witch Knight's Defiance again. Bone Pirate is basically the stamina version of having a shit ton of stamina recovery. Shadow of Red Mountain, which is a fun option to farm if you're ever looking for a good set to sell. It's in Stonefalls, which is anyone can have access to. Eternal Hunt, which is a unique option that I never had thought really about. Azur's Reaper, which is another cool option. Definitely think it's used a little bit more on dot builds, but can certainly be used on anything. So you could definitely think dots. Dragon Knights are definitely the people that utilize those, and they've got a whole list, and then they go back into the monster sets again. So obviously we've just looked through an entire guide written by somebody else, so now we're going to do something even more intricate. Now we're going to see, if I go to the best in slot build by some of the other content creators, we're going to see how many of these sets that we've already seen make that list. So for example, now we have Alcast's video. We can see everything that he's suggesting we've already gone through. So every single set that he has suggested here, we've already touched upon in this video. Here we can see a Dots Gaming build, which also highlights pretty much sets that we've already covered. Now this is for a Magicka Warden, and the reason that I'm kind of showing you these snapshots is because a lot of times I think people become so obsessed about sets and things that they don't really think that, for example, looking at this, could you tell if this is for a Warden? Would this work on a Necromancer? This could probably work for a Sorcerer. It could work for a Dragon Knight. Those are the mindsets that I want you guys to start being in, and it's more so about you. What can you proc? What do you want to proc? Do you like to play with sets where you don't have to worry about procs? Do you like to be able to focus more on skills to keep you alive? Do you want to focus more so on your sets to keep you alive? That's why I think that the biggest piece and takeaway from this video that I want you to have is it's going to come down to you. Also remember too that your sets are not your entire stats. Your skills give you stats. Your Mundus Stone gives you stats. The ability to, drink potions will give you stats. You get food buffs that gives you different stats. You have champion points that give you stats. Do not put all your focus into the sets. There are some great sets. I think Clever Alchemist and Balorgs, as well as Wretched Vitality, are some of the easier sets to pilot. Although I would say that until Mara's Balm is nerfed, maybe Wretched Vitality should be Mara's Balm, but everyone knows that it's going to be nerfed kind of here in the future, so it's one of those, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't start getting used to using a different set. Those are the conversations that you should need to have with yourself internally when you're building your characters. And that's why wanted to kind of go through different resources for different content creators, even though it feels a little bit cheap on my end, to be like, yeah, just look at all this other stuff that other people are saying. And remember, the simplistic piece of it is it comes down to you. There are plenty of people out there who use really good no proc sets like New Moon Acolyte, or they use very simplistic ones like New Moon Acolyte, and then they'll slap on something like Clever Alchemist, so the only proc that they have to worry about to get their tons of damage is essentially to drink a potion, because New Moon Acolyte is always active. Those are the things that you just need to start thinking of in your own brainal compartments. You guys saw my build, but my build focuses much more on stats. You can certainly build for stats, because my skills do the burst for me, where a lot of people, they want their sets to do the burst for them. So those are the conversations to start having with yourself, and certainly that was just the sorcerer build. Some of my other builds are obviously very different, but that's the conversation, and that's why I always like my videos to be very conversational style, because I think that a lot of times we get into this mindset of copying and trying to replicate, but in reality we all play differently. We all are better at different things. I'm not the best at bar swapping. I don't like to have to bar swap in PvP, because I think that bar swapping every 10 seconds can be a distraction. It might make me mess up on some combos that I'm trying to do. So I like to have offensive bar, defensive bar. We talked about that in the skills video. Other people, they might want their sets to be able to proc on the front bar, so that way they can have an arena weapon on the back bar, or vice versa. Those are the conversations to start thinking to yourself, because it's going to come down to your comfort. And in the comments below, I will be trying to help give suggestions for things. But the beautiful thing about PvP sets is that a lot of people think they're incredibly complicated, but the reality is it is exceptionally simplistic on its surface. And you can break it down again into offensive, defensive sets. You've got defensive things such as defensive abilities. You've got mobility. You've got things like sustain. And on the offensive side, you have penetration. You have total stats, which is going to cause you to deal more damage. And you have those things like Zons, burst damage, beams that are going to go from you into the enemy, and so on and so forth. So that's the dichotomy. And again, I think that if you're a Magicka character, one defensive set with the rest offense, maybe you could even sneak in, if you're really good at utilizing your skills, your shields, you could wear all offensive sets. There are certainly people that do that. If you're stamina, you'd probably want something defensive, generally a sword and board, at least to having it on a 3-piece body, so that way when you back bar it, you can switch into that. Mara's Balm is definitely very popular for that, but also things like Wretched Vitality are very popular for that as well. Any sort of sustain and any sort of ability to give yourself stats back is going to be great. Daedric Trickery can be something that's another really good way to kind of keeping yourself alive in those bad situations. But again, it comes down to you, the player. So I hope this video was helpful, because the goal was to kind of get your brain juices flowing and see what you guys think would be really good to use. Every resource that I am talking about is going to be put in the description, because for some reason YouTube hates links. So I'm going to be posting their content as well in there, because they have some great builds. And what I hope after this video, you can look at their builds and think, oh, well, that's how they plan to utilize it. Maybe for me, I might want to do this different. I might want to change the Mundus Stone. I might want to change this set. I might want to use a different mythical. I might want to use this a little bit differently. My playstyle is a little bit different. That's the goal of the video. Hopefully we've accomplished it. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you guys have suggestions for build videos, I'll probably go live either today or tomorrow and just kind of chit chat with you guys about PvP builds, because I really do want you guys to succeed. It's very hard to condense all of the information into a short video without becoming a bit overwhelming with information. So again, comments below. 3 giveaway drawings. As you guys know, the first one will be the favorite comment of the month. It could be helpful, it could be funny, it could be anything. Unfortunately, it's completely biased, but the other 2, do not worry, are not. It is not my favorite subscriber, a random subscriber, and then a random comment. We do a $20 giveaway to each of those 3 winners, but we also have started to do things like merchandise, such as mugs and backpacks. So if something like that interests you, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Hope this again was helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.
Remember to like and subscribe to Jake Clips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails! Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.
And don't judge me for saying talk to you guys later twice. It's always hard to kind of wrap up those final thoughts. And it's very hard to talk about PvP because everyone has such strong opinions on PvP. You know, oh, you gotta wear this. Oh, you gotta wear that. Oh, well, this set is so much worse than this one. And blah, 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 blah. I just wanted to kind of give something that is very, like, surface level, but kind of gets you enough information to where you feel confident in building based on your knowledge, how you can play the game. So that's the goal of this video. Hopefully it's achieved it, but if not, do not worry. I'll be in the comments, I'll be on the live streams, and I'm always there to help you guys because that's the goal for these videos. It's not about the views, the subscribers, the likes. Even if it only gets a couple views, I hope that it helped the people that watched it, and I will catch you guys at hopefully during the live stream. So I'll see you then. Bye, guys.